West Virginia heads to Houston Thursday night to face their former head coach, Dana Holgorsen. Could this be a letdown game for the Mountaineers, or will their defense continue to lead them to victory? I'm going to bring a guest on, and we're going to talk about it right after this word from my sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another edition of Cougars Corner. Belly yourself up to the bar and let me pour you out this shot of top shelf college football content. On tap today, I have a very special guest that's going to help me serve you up this top shelf content, and his name is Parker Ainsworth. Parker, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. We talked a little bit in the summer about this matchup, and now it's finally here. It's exciting, though. I'm glad we're in the swing of things.
Absolutely. And Parker, go ahead and before we dig into the content, man, let everybody know where they can find you at.
Yeah, on social media, I'm at Painsworth 512, Parker Ainsworth, and 512. The show is Locked on Cougs. We do a daily Houston Cougars show, YouTube, audio platforms, wherever you get podcasts. Just 20, 30 minutes a day, very bite-sized for a commute or whatever, but all thanks Houston Cougars. And we've been looking forward to this one too. And I'm sure you have the same feelings, but I almost wish this were a road game. And I've been kind of, I think, the outlier on that for Houston folks. But the atmosphere in West Virginia and Morgantown for this one, people got to be pretty excited about this heading into this Thursday, right?
Yeah, we are. We're excited, but a lot of us are also very nervous. Because number one, losing, no offense, but losing to Dana would not be good for us. Considering he left us, and it wouldn't be good for our sitting coach either. Number two, there's a lot of guys on the Houston team that played at West Virginia, which we may touch on later. That's concerning for me because I'm worried that those guys are going to spill some secrets. And
maybe.
I'm not sure how much help that does, but it's in the back of my mind. I mean, they're going to share what they know. Obviously, some things have changed, but still, right? I mean, there are going to be some things that they can probably, they practiced against this team every day and this coaching staff every day. So I'm sure there's some things they can share that may not be on tape. But that's another concern. And two, like you and I were talking, before we got on here, I worry every week because this team, even though we've been winning, every game has been a nail biter. Every game has been close. And it's, one possession away or one mistake away from being a different outcome, right? So, and I just, and I'm also worried this could be a letdown spot for us. This team has been playing with a chip on their shoulder the entire season so far. And now they're starting to get a little bit of respect. People are starting to talk about them in a positive light now. There's now one of only two undefeated teams in the conference behind Oklahoma. So there's some things now that are starting to look more positive for West Virginia. And I'm worried, can this team handle success? Can they play without that chip on their shoulder? Can they find another reason to motivate themselves? You know what I'm saying? So that's one of my concerns.
Well, and it's interesting to say all that because I almost wonder if, in the same way that you're talking about getting overconfident or what I almost wonder if Houston and Dana himself are going to get too in their own heads about it, right? Like if they're going to be, I got to get this one, I got to get that one. Dana made the comments when he left West Virginia about not being able to win with those kids. Mm-hmm. Well, it'd be sure pretty darn hypocritical to then go out and lose to those kids, right? So yep. I feel like there's a pressure he's put on himself in that way that makes it pretty challenging. Anyway, I think this makes it exciting for you and I, though. We're not playing. We're sitting here enjoying it as nervous. Like, you can twist your stomach a little bit, but at the end of the day, we're going to talk about it however it goes.
Yeah. My stomach's already twisted. And I've been in some DM conversations on social media with some people. I'm like, some of our fans are a little bit overconfident. And I'm like, man, we cannot overlook Houston, man. This team can put up points and they can put them up quick if we're not careful. So, but let's get right into the meat and potatoes. As I like to say here, Parker, when I look at Houston, they've not done their defense has struggled. There's no secret. They have one of the worst defenses in the Big 12 this year so far. And so what would you say? So stick to that side of the football. What would you say has been the biggest issue for Houston on that side of the football so far?
Healthy and consistent linebacker play. I actually really like their defensive line, and so I hesitate to say like the whole front seven, but they've had trouble stopping the run, and they've had trouble stopping the run probably, honestly, since week 1 against UTSA. Now I look at this team though and think like their defensive line's talented, so what's the issue there? But the linebackers have rotated a lot, and that implies to me the guys are just playing out of scheme. One of the linebackers that had moved down to linebacker this year, named Hassan Hippolyte, had kind of been a consistent player at that level, but he's been moved back to the safety spot like he played last year because of some other injuries, right? And so that takes some consistency out of there as well. But truthfully, both Texas Tech and TCU in our Big 12 games, Texas Tech put up 49 points and TCU was 38 points, and they just ran the ball down our throats. I mean, you all saw them up close and personal too. Taj Brooks and Amani Baylor are very talented backs, and I don't mean to take anything away from them, but we looked outmanned at the point of attack in some of those instances. And so if Houston's going to turn this thing around, I think the big deal would be stopping the run with that linebacker level of defense. That's the biggest weakness as I see it. And that obviously is if we're playing you guys this Thursday, that doesn't bode too well for what y'all like to do. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I do feel like we have a matchup advantage there because our offensive line is, as you know, with Zach Frazier, All-American center there. We have 2 really good tackles on the ends and Doug Nestor and Wyatt Milam. Assuming Milam will be back, he got an eye poke in the TCU game that pretty much swelled his eye shut. And it was after the whistle, by the way. I want to throw that out there. But yeah, we think he'll be back. Because he'll have a week and a half or almost 2 weeks to heal up. So we think he'll be back. But yeah, we're really confident in our offensive line, and we feel like we've been able to hold our own against pretty much everybody that we played. Penn State was obviously a really tough matchup for us, but our O-line played okay. They didn't play great, but they played okay. We were in that game up until the end, really. So I feel like we do have an advantage there. But the one player up front that I do worry a little bit about with you guys is, at least looking at the stat sheet now, is Nelson Caesar. He has 4.5 sacks already on the season. Can you talk about him a little bit?
Yeah, he's an edge rusher. He's a guy that was, I think Athlon had him as a preseason second-team all-conference guy. And if I were picking one guy on our defense to make an all-conference team, it probably would have been him. He is a traditional edge rusher type guy. You mentioned the sack count. He's at 4.5 sacks. I would add that through 4.5 sacks, and we're coming off a bye week, so we've only played 5 games.
Right.
The 4.5 sacks is impressive when we realize how often he does get chipped and doubled. He is listed at more like 6'3" and change, 6'4", and more like 250, 260, depending on what year you're looking at his weight, and I guess probably like what day you're looking at his weight. But he is a good pass rush type guy, and he's good enough in the run game. The truth is that, like I said, the run game has not really been the defensive line's problem to me. I feel like they've held their gaps in position fairly well. The deal is that there's only 4 of them, right? And they play with 2 traditional edge rushers, stand-up type guys, Nelson included. But Nelson can get after the passer. Like if this turns into a passing game, I bet Nelson gets him one in this one as well. The truth is that that's kind of his MO.
Right. Yeah, and so he concerns me. And you say he moves around a lot, right?
Yeah, so you'll see on 3rd and long, he'll line up on either side of the defensive line on whatever down. And then on 3rd and long, you'll see them look like they're in 3 down front. He's almost walking around like a linebacker. He's very athletic, very quick, and good with his hands.
Yeah.
So he's listed as an edge rusher, but he's really just a pass rusher. He's a really talented pass rusher. And we're recording on a Sunday. Those guys get paid to play on Sundays, typically, right? That's a premium position.
Yeah, and we, that makes me feel a little better about it. Even though he may get one, I mentioned our 2 tackles, Doug Nestor, White Milam. They have played really, really well this year. Two of our higher graded performers from according to Pro Football Focus have been those 2 guys. So I'm pretty excited about that matchup. And I'm sure, like I said, he may beat him a time or 2, but overall, I think they'll be able to hold their own against him. At least I hope so. And then I look, you guys have 6 interceptions already in only 5 games. So speak to it, but at the same time, you also, when you look at your passing yards allowed, you're one of the worst in the conference.
Yeah.
So it looks to me like you guys give up a lot of yards, but you will force some turnovers occasionally. And I'm assuming that's what you kind of rely on to keep them in games. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, it's a high risk, high reward kind of coverage. A lot of go for the ball kind of things and man to man coverage. And frankly, like I said, it's led to some interceptions. The interesting thing has been that interceptions have been mostly a pair of transfers. Malik Fleming transferred in from East Carolina. He's a 5'8" guy he's played a lot of slot corner, but opened up the season starting out the outside guy. But he's had 3 picks on the year so far. Isaiah Hamilton is a guy that Houstonians love. He's from the city of Houston. He went to Texas Southern, the HBCU in town, and transferred to U of H this year. He's also like 5'10", but he's gotten himself a couple of picks, including one that Houston didn't end up winning the Rice game, but one that kind of helped to turn that one to where it ended up going to double overtime. I would argue that the defensive backs, it's been interesting because they've given up a lot of passing yards, like you said. But I feel like the amount of turnovers they produced and then pass breakups and stuff like that too, I feel fairly confident in the corners and safeties in a lot of these areas. So I don't think that West Virginia is going to beat Houston through the air. I don't think they're going to have to, though. I think West Virginia is going to want to keep it on the ground, is my understanding.
Right. Yeah, we will.
So that's kind of, all for naught.
Yeah, we might throw 10 or 15 passes. I mean, let's be realistic. Now it'll probably be more than that. It'll probably be closer to 20, but still, we're not going to be airing the football out a whole lot. At least we hope not. If we do, it probably means we're not, the game's not going the way we want it to. But so I do feel like you guys have an advantage there because our receiving core has struggled so far to prove that they can get separation from DBs. They've had some drop issues. Now, a couple of guys that were having the major drop issues are no longer on the team. They've chosen to take a red shirt for the rest of the season and transfer. So that's opened the door for some other guys to step in. Last week, even though we didn't throw the ball great, we did have one drive where we had some guys step up and make some big catches for us. So we're hoping we can build on that, and that continues to improve. And let's be real, Garrett Greene's only played 3 full football games this year. Actually, not even 3. Really 2 full games and then a half against Duquesne. Because he got injured. He got injured in the first drive against Pitt and set out the whole game against Texas Tech. So he's still improving. He'll continue to improve as the year goes on as well. So, but I feel like you guys probably have an advantage when it comes to our passing attack against your passing defense. Let's move over to the other side of the ball real quick. When I look at Houston, the one thing that concerns me the most when I look at them is they have this could arguably be the best receiving core we have faced so far, and that includes Texas Tech and TCU. I mean, you got Joseph Manjack, you've got Sam Brown, who, by the way, is the leading receiver in the conference right now, already over 500 yards receiving.
And a West Virginia guy, right? He started.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up. But yeah, former West Virginia guy. He was here a year, maybe 2, and then he transferred out. And has been at Houston ever since. But yeah, very good receiver. One guy that I wish we had on the roster. And then you've got Matthew Golden as well, who's another good receiver there. Can you speak to your receiving core a little bit?
Yeah, I think the thing that probably ruffled Dana said several things. I think that actually probably you could argue ruffle a lot of people's feathers in Morgantown. But at Big 12 Media Day, he called this the best receiver room he's ever had. I know he had some talented rooms there at West Virginia, and I'm not this isn't the show we need to debate all that. That's more off-season content, I guess, probably. But I do think it's a very talented room and it goes fairly deep. I think the critique I would have that's been interesting is they pretty much only play those big 3, Sam Brown, Manjack, and Matthew Golden, each have over 20 catches. Sam Brown has over 30 catches. And the next highest is a running back has 9, right? Like it's very much focused on those 3 guys. Sam Brown has all the yards. He has, like I said, 518 yards leading the conference, just 1 touchdown. You get down the red zone, Matthew Golden has all the touchdowns. He has 4 touchdowns. He has the least yards at the 3. Coming into the season, Matthew Golden would have been the hyped guy. He was, like I mentioned, Athlon had him as a preseason All-American. He was pretty much touted as he and Patrick Paul, left tackle, were the 2 highest ranked guys on most draft analysis guys for Houston. Golden has drawn a lot of double coverage, a lot of brackets, a lot of things like that, and has been visibly frustrated. I don't think he would say I'm speaking out of turn to say he looks frustrated out there playing ball, because when he finally breaks free from a double team and finally gets separation out there, he's had a couple drops too. Sam Brown has kind of picked up the slack. Like I said, 518 yards through 5 games. It's averaging over 100 yards a game. And it's been something they've needed, kind of a life raft. They looked bad in a couple Big 12 games. Like, they didn't score an offensive touchdown against TCU. I will say in that game, they had a kickoff return touchdown by Matthew Golden himself, right? And so those 3 guys continue to look good, even really like with a couple drops here and there, because they're just that talented once the ball gets in their hands. My pitch has been to just throw them a screen pass, like take all the stuff out of it, get the ball in their hands.
Yeah, that's fair. And this receiving core does make me nervous. Like I said, I did go back and I've been watching some tape on them and watched. And obviously, I've looked over the numbers a lot today in preparation for this, and they're pretty impressive, man. Our DBs have been playing well, especially Beanie Bishop. Right now, he has the highest number of passes defended in the conference. So I don't know if they will line him up maybe one-on-one against Sam Brown, or if they'll just play him on one side or the other. They typically like to play our DBs. They kind of like to play them on a specific side of the field, not really moving around a lot. So we'll see how that works. The other corner is a guy named Malachi Ruffin, who's the only player left on our team that was here when Dana was here.
It's small world.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So he's a 5th or 6th year guy, and but he was a walk-on at that time. He actually walked on the team while Dana was the coach, and has now worked his way up to not only earning a scholarship but becoming a starter. And he's played pretty darn well over there. He's got a pick. He's got a pick already this year. He's been covering guys pretty well. He's actually performed better than I thought he would, just to be honest with you. He's quote unquote punching above his weight class, you could say, based on what you would expect him to be, being a former walk-on, right? So I'm really happy with how those guys have played. But again, I don't know that we played any receivers as talented as what you guys have.
Well, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but if Ruffin's been there that long, he also has experience. Even if he started off as a walk-on, he's a very experienced guy, I would assume, right?
He is.
Play a lot of snaps of football. And so I think it's going to, Houston's got good receivers. It's going to take that. I don't remember if I wouldn't have been doing Texas Tech stuff a year ago. I don't remember, but Houston's quarterback is a Texas Tech transfer named Donovan Smith, who's played some Big 12 football before. Big guy, 6'4",
we remember
250. And he's the guy in charge of distributing the ball. He had a turnover problem at Texas Tech, where admittedly he threw too many interceptions. And this year, the thing that's kind of got some criticism is he's almost holding on to prevent throwing interceptions. He's like holding on to the ball too long, right?
Okay.
And the thing that getting a new offense, it's very understandable, but it certainly led to some higher sack numbers. I don't know enough about, because again, y'all played Tech and TCU, and they like to run the ball. I don't know enough about this West Virginia pass rush. So selfishly, can I ask, what does that look like on your side of the ball?
Well, I'm glad that actually segued into one of my questions about you guys. Perfect. Because I noticed you guys have given up quite a few sacks this year. And I was going to, but you also have a left tackle who's probably going to play on Sundays. As
he's
well.
Really good.
So my question was going to be, is it an offensive line issue, or is it Donovan Smith holding on to the ball too long? What's the issue? Receivers not getting open, which I don't think that's an issue based on their numbers. So I'll answer your question to say, yes, our pass rush has been really good. I think we have 1 or 2 less sacks than you guys do on the season, from defensively. But we get home a lot. We don't necessarily get a lot of sacks, but we have a lot of hurries, a lot of knockdowns, a lot of pressure on the quarterback. I mean, if you watch almost every team we've played, the quarterback has been under duress for most of the game. So that's, to answer your question, there's that.
Yeah, I would say as far as the issues Houston has, a little column A, a little column B. Like I said, I think Donovan Smith is holding on to the ball too long because he's both cognizant of what happened when he was at Tech and why he ultimately lost the starting job at Tech. And I think he's also, learning a new offense. And so the reads, the banjos, the audibles, all those kinds of things are all a little different, right? Mm-hmm. Hopefully after bye week, by middle of the season, that thing's kind of settled out and out of the system a little bit. I do think, though, that the offensive line is having Not anything you wouldn't expect in moving into a Power 5 conference, and y'all went from it was a little bit different when West Virginia transferred up to the Big 12, but and moving the American to the Big 12, I think you're seeing a lot more consistent, talented pass rush. Meaning there's no play where you get a 245-pound defensive end. There's no play where you're playing a 300 or even a 290-pound nose tackle. There aren't a whole lot of those guys anymore. So those reps are a little bit different. And then admittedly, I've been critical of the guard play. I think the tackles and center are all right. The left tackle is a lot better than the right tackle. Left tackle Patrick Paul, like you mentioned, he'll be playing on Sundays. It's just aware and when he's drafted. I don't know if the right tackle ends up being a drafted guy or not. I think they're both a lot better than the guards, though. And the guards end up giving up some stuff in stunts, getting caught off guard, no pun intended, and stuff like that. And to me, that ends up leading to more guys in Donovan's face, and then things just start to spiral. I would say that they were competitive through a half against both TCU and Texas Tech. They were down one score in each game at half, and frankly, had made a couple mistakes in each half. Each of those two games that would have put them in the lead. Against Texas Tech, they got two special teams touchdowns in the first half and walked into halftime down just 7 points. Against TCU, they had a couple turnovers in the first half. Like I mentioned, didn't have an offensive touchdown. We're still just down 20-13. So I think they've shown that they can compete by and large. It's just the longevity of the game, the depth charts, and those kinds of things do wear down when you're moving up into the big leagues, and we're seeing that play out.
Right. And when you look at our defensive pass rush, most of our rushing success has come from the left side of the defense. We have a bandit named Josh Bartlett who likes to rush. He's a pass rush guy too, along with Sean Martin, who's our defensive end over there, who's 6'5", 290, near 300 pounds. Really long, really lengthy, really pretty athletic as well. Those are the two guys that cause a lot of havoc on that side of the line. But when you mention the guard play, one thing Houston fans probably need to be cognizant of is we have a middle linebacker named Lee Kpogba, who's an absolute just ball of energy, man. I mean, he's like 4th or 5th in the conference in tackles right now, and that's only in 5 games. You know, a lot of the teams have played 6 games already, except our teams and I think BYU maybe. But yeah, so in 5 games, he's 4th or 5th in the league in tackles, and if you look at the last couple drives of that TCU game, he was absolutely wreaking havoc, and it was in Chandler Morris's face, caused him to make a couple of errant throws, knocked him down a couple times. I mean, he's really good rushing up the middle when they choose to blitz him. So that might be, if they see a weakness in the guard play, they might try to exploit that with Lee Kpogba coming up the middle. And we've even had some success rushing with our safeties this year too, as well.
Talk to me about this Kpogba kid, though, because I was looking at stuff. This kid's played a lot of football. He went to Syracuse and then East Mississippi, which is the school from Last Chance U, right? So he looks like a guy that's kind of a very veteran football player. Mm-hmm. I didn't know he was a pass rush threat. His numbers and stuff indicate to me, and I'm still diving into the tape as record on Sunday before the Thursday game, but he looks like the kind of guy that's, at 6'1", 230, 240, 2 different places I have him listed at. That's like a stocky, stop the run kind of guy. I also have to worry about this guy rushing the passer, you're saying?
Well, that's his strength. I mean, his strength is stopping the run, but he will rush the passer. I mean, he's not going to do it every play, because he obviously has to drop back in coverage some too. He has to do a little bit of everything at the linebacker spot. But yeah, I mean, he can rush the passer if they, and when he does, man, he does it with with authority. I mean, he's not he's a force to be reckoned with, man. He's just one of those guys that just kind of like an Energizer Bunny, man. He just never stops. Plays with a lot of energy, never gives up on plays, gets sideline to sideline. Well, his biggest weakness is his pass coverage. He gets. I mean, he has really good numbers, but he gets fairly low PFF grades every week because of his pass coverage weaknesses.
Huh.
If you look at his run stopping grades, they're usually good.
Yeah.
But his overall PFF grade is usually in the mid to high 50s every week. But yet he'll have 10 tackles and a sack and have a PFF grade of 55. You know what I mean? It's a little mind-boggling, actually.
He looks, in watching stuff on him briefly, he physically looks like a kid from like 1998, right? Like he looks like a different era's linebacker, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's good. He's one of our better players. He's one of our leaders as well. And he has played a lot of football, like you said. Started out a Power Five, it didn't work out at Syracuse. He went down to JUCO for a couple years. Wanted to prove himself at the Power Five level, so he came to West Virginia. And when he got here, he was very hungry because he had that
Mhm.
because it didn't work out at Syracuse, and he had something to prove. So he has a chip on his shoulder, and he goes into every game with that chip. And he's a hard guy to defend from a run and perspective. And like I said, he can rush the passer when called on to do so. Just but he will get beaten pass coverage occasionally. So if you guys have a good tight end like Michael Laughlin, by the way, or someone like that who they can get him singled on somehow in pass coverage, that could be an area that Houston could exploit that.
Well, and you mentioned O'Laughlin, who is a West Virginia guy. Um, he's actually Houston has not used the tight ends like I wish they would.
That's
As far
Dana
as
Holgerson. He never
yeah,
does.
never does. But he's had as good a year as any, and frankly, under Dana Holgerson, has probably had as good a year as you could expect a tight end to have in the past game. He's got just the 4 catches, but I feel like he has a couple other targets. Um, and I've enjoyed watching him play ball here. Um, Talk to me a little bit about as an identity in the defense. You mentioned the defensive line and having it's a hybrid position, this bandit position,
Mhm.
right? What are they? What are they known for? As you've been watching, what do they do well? What, as someone who watches every single snap, what would you describe the defense like in a couple words?
Pure chaos.
Yeah,
They're aggressive and they cause pure chaos. So that's their mantra. Last year they tried to the staff tried to make the defense a little more uh, schematically complicated, meaning they were trying to make it harder for defenses to figure them out. And we were terrible last year on defense. We were one of the worst defenses in the country. So they decided this year to, instead of trying to be complicated schematically, they said we're just going to be as simple as we can be. We're going to be really good at tackling, So they worked on tackling a lot more during the off season and then during camp. And we're just going to get back to the basics, and so we can just be really aggressive, and our guys don't have to think. Because last year they had to think too much. This year they've taken a lot of the thinking out, and they're just letting them go play ball, man. Just go play fast, and go be athletic, and go be you, go cause havoc. And the fact we go, 10, 11 guys deep on our defensive front has helped with that because we've always got fresh guys in there, and our guy who leads the team in sacks is probably guy number 6 or 7 on that list. That's how good our defensive front has been and how consistent they are. We can bring in a whole 3 brand new guys for our starters, and you wouldn't even know it because we have almost no drop off. It's pretty remarkable, actually. It's the first team I can remember in a long time that has that kind of depth up front. Now, I know Houston likes to go fast, though. Is Dana still running a lot of high tempo offense, or what's been the
in
strategy there?
spurts. He's not doing it consistently enough. I don't think I like that stuff. He's been doing it in spurts. You'll see, in the middle of the first quarter on the second or third possession, they'll get a completion, just jump into it and go into a little bit of tempo stuff
Mhm.
or things like that. I haven't picked up on a cue as to, why they're doing it or when they're doing it, as opposed to just kind of gives you a little bit of an injection or a shot in the arm. Um, I think they're good at it, and I think that they should do it more often. I'd be interested to see it, and I'm going to ask you the same question. And coming off the bye week, one of the things I would like to see them get better at would be that kind of stuff more often. I mentioned the short passing game, the screen kind of stuff, but both teams are coming off a bye week, and
Mhm.
I think as a coach, a bye week is a blessing, right? You can find stuff to get better at. You got a few games under your belt, so you can actually see what you look like. Is there any changes in West Virginia you see happening after the bye week?
I don't see a lot of changes. I think they'll. I mean, they're always going to continue to try to work on getting their passing game improved. Like I said, Garrett's experience will help there. I expect you might see more Jaheim White. He's a true freshman running back we have. He's number 22, I believe. Because C.J. Donaldson, even though he's been good for us, he hasn't been running as good as we expected him to. And and he's more of a downhill power guy. We've got Jaheim White, this true freshman, who's about 5'7", 5'8". Kind of reminds you of Deuce Vaughn as far as his body type.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not comparing him to Deuce Vaughn from a talent perspective. It's too early
No,
for
yeah, but I got what you mean.
because I know somebody will come in the comments and say that it never fails. But I'm not comparing his skill or where he's going to be I think he has the potential to be that good, but whether he will be or not, who knows? But his body type, he's got that kind of body, and he's really shifty. So he's a change of pace guy for us a little bit, and he's actually, I think he's leading all of our running backs in yards per carry right now. So I'm hoping they'll give him the ball a little more, and Coach Brown has indicated that he wants to do that. And then we have a couple receivers as well that he's probably going to get involved more. One, a true freshman named Rodney Gallagher, who's more of a quick twitch guy that he's probably going to get involved more. He's number 2. And then we have a transfer from Marshall named E.J. Horton, who's probably one of the fastest guys on the team that we kind of look to be that deep threat guy. So I expect those 2 guys to probably get more snaps than they may have gotten in previous games. But that's really the only changes and on defense, obviously we won't see Trey Lathan, who's been our starting wheel linebacker most of the year because of the broken leg that he suffered. There's going to be a true freshman filling in for him named Ben Cutter. Now Ben Cutter is another one of those guys that plays with a lot of energy, but he's a true freshman, so he's probably going to make some mistakes. It'll be interesting to see if Houston can capitalize on that at all, or try to maybe focus on him a little bit, put him in some matchup situations where they feel like they have an advantage. And then obviously we don't know about Aubrey Burks, our star safety. Is he going to be back from, he's the one we saw get carted off from the neck injury. We don't know.
I was surprised to hear last week that he's going to play again. I thought he was done for a long time when I saw that.
Did. We all did,
man. So hey, awesome to hear that he's doing well. I hope he's not rushing back. But awesome to hear that he's doing well, right? Man.
Yeah, all of his tests came back negative, and Neil talked like he would be back. Now, maybe I don't know if he'll be back this week, but he will be back, sooner than they initially thought, because it looked really, really bad. It turned out not to be as bad as it looked, so which was a great thing.
Definitely.
So we'll see. A lot of it's just going to depend on him. How well he recovers and how quick he recovers, and is there any trauma left over there? That he needs another week to recover from, whatever. I'm sure that's going to play a role too, I would imagine. I'm sure that was a scary moment for him.
It was intense. I was sitting around, I'm doing a post-game show the night after the game or whatever, and I got a TV right here with TCU on it, and it's TCU Western. I was like, whoa. Oh, man. Like we were all freaking out in line. Like, what's going on there?
And it didn't even look bad when it happened. It looked like he just, a normal tackle or whatever.
But they replayed it. You could tell.
He hit his head when he fell. His head smacked the ground. So, I'm assuming he probably got a concussion or something from it. Would be my guess.
Yeah,
but again, and with concussions, they might recover in a week, and it might be a couple weeks. You never know. So
yeah, at least it's not a neck though.
Absolutely. So whether he plays or not, could it? Now our backup safeties have played well, Marcus Floyd and Hershey McLaurin, but. There again, it affects your depth, right? You need guys to be able to give other guys breathers and that kind of thing. And we're not very deep in our secondary, unfortunately. We've had a couple of the transfers we brought in also have season-ending injuries. One's a safety, one's a corner. So we've been hit with the injury bug there this year, unfortunately. So having Aubrey Burks back sooner rather than later would be a huge boost for our depth. Real quick, I want to touch on. Our guy Tony Mathis, how's he doing so far for Houston?
I've liked Tony a lot. Tony's been more of the between the guards kind of runner, short yardage kind of guy for Houston. They got a freshman that's got some springs to him. That's more of an off tackle outside kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Jenkins. Parker Jenkins, who's kind of come alive since the same Houston game. But the big deal with Tony was he missed some time. He missed a couple games in the middle of the stretch so far with like an ankle injury, and he's back, and he played some against Tech, and so now we had a bye week. He certainly ought to be back now, right, and more full swing. But I liked him a lot. I think he's a tough runner, and I think he's a really good blocking back too.
Yeah,
I know that's not sexy, right? But he's a good blocker. He's a good blocker.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that. Tony, I don't think Tony was ever the best runner on our team, but he got a lot of snaps because of his blocking ability. He was a leader in the locker room. He's just a good dude, man. Tony Mathis is just a good guy. He's the kind of guy you want on your team. Unfortunately for him, he had gotten passed up on the depth chart by C.J. Donaldson and I think Jalen Anderson. So he felt like he could go to Houston and maybe get a better opportunity, and maybe he still will. I know once he gets a chance for more carries, maybe he'll be able to take advantage of it. I wish him nothing but the best. Him and Mike O'Loughlin both. They both spent 3 or 4 years at West Virginia and put in a lot of time. And unfortunately for O'Loughlin, he had some serious. I mean, he had 2 or 3 season-ending injuries during his time here. Mathis was banged up a lot while he was here too. He's, I don't think he ever made it through a season without at least one injury. So.
Well, he's already had the ankle so far this year, so knock on wood. Hopefully, that's all it is.
Yeah. So I wish him the best every other game except this one.
Fair enough.
But I just wanted to check in on those guys, and I know what about Juan Guzman over on the defensive side? He was also a West Virginia guy.
He had a season.
I'm sorry, Noah Guzman.
Noah Guzman had a season-ending the other day. So, I heard someone say it might have been message board talk. I don't know how much it was, but that he's going to try and apply to get another year afterwards. But he was playing fine when, like I said, we've moved some DBs around since we've had some injuries, but he's been okay. The West Virginia guy that everyone's loving right now is Sam.
Right.
But I'm sure that that's the guy you're ultimately like rooting for in every game, but not this one, right? Because he's got the capability to really explode.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised he's still on the team after some of the stuff we saw him do last year, getting in fights with people and all that. So I'm glad to see that he's gotten past all that, and hopefully he'll be able to stay on the straight and narrow and keep himself out of trouble. And I think I heard you say on another show on your show with Mountaineer Paul the other day that he's grown up a lot this year and he's matured and he seems like he's doing things the right way. Is that an accurate statement?
He does. I was surprised. He spoke to the media after maybe it was the Sam Houston game. He spoke to me in one of the games afterwards, and he just sounded like a different kid. Coos. He sounded like a kid that's grown up some. We heard him last year after games, and then last year he ended the season getting a fight with a Tulsa kid after the game was over, and he ended up missing the bowl game because of it. Like I said, just immaturity. Like you can't do that. You can't do that. And then to ultimately have that guy, I thought he was very professional sounding in his post-game stuff this year. And I don't know if that's Tequila Shorts, who y'all know very well, right, as a receivers coach, getting it in his ear. I don't know if it's Dana. I don't know if it's Donovan as a quarterback in his ear. But somebody, I mean, he's grown up a lot. I think those are valid things to say about him. I don't mean to discredit what you said about him from before. I just think he's grown up a lot.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I never want to see a young man with that kind of talent throw it away, right, because he can't stay out of trouble. One more quick question. Well, actually, I got 2 more. First of all, what do you think as a Houston fan? What do you think about Garrett Greene at quarterback for us?
So I came away from, again, mostly watching TCU. I thought it was a tough kid. Impressed by how tough the kid was. And frankly, I don't think the arm is anything I'm crazy worried about, or, that he's somebody like schematically, we got to figure not Patrick Mahomes, not breaking a bunch of rules to get ready for him or anything like that. But I do think that there's something about the quarterback being a tough kid. I was surprised when I was looking up statistics on him. He's not as I figured he was like a 6'1" type guy.
He's only like 5'10", 5'11".
And I knew he wasn't a giant, but I didn't realize he was that little. And little guy run around like that, like I'm taking Elsa Caesar. He's a tough kid, and I know that. I'm not saying, but like, you just at some point, little people running around get hurt. So I'm sure.
And he's been hurt. I mean, I don't know if you probably know. I don't know if you know the story, but I mentioned earlier he missed a couple games with an ankle, and he actually wasn't healthy in that game. He wasn't supposed to start that game.
The TCU game. That's the announcer was saying. We're like, the heart of this kid, and all those kind of cliches.
He wasn't supposed to start. Nico was going to start, and then Nico rolled his ankle at the end of practice on Wednesday that week. So instead of going with a third stringer, Neil went to Garrett and said, "Okay, I'm giving you a chance here, but you got to prove to me that you can put weight on that leg and on that ankle," and he was able to. So Garrett said he was 100%, and I think even Neil said it, but he wasn't. I mean, you could tell by watching him play. He was limping a few times, and he wasn't running with the same. He usually cuts a little bit better than he did in that game. He still ran for 80 yards and had a long touchdown run.
Yeah,
he normally cuts a lot sharper. then he was able to cut. But he still did enough, in the run game to be able to keep us in it, or keep us in it. We won, but to keep us moving the chains. And anytime we needed a big play, he'd make it with his feet. And he was able to make a few throws too late in the game when we needed him. But yeah, he's not going to blow anybody away with his accuracy. He does have a really good deep ball. Unfortunately, we just haven't had receivers get open enough to utilize it. He's not the best at putting touch on the ball, and he struggles at times with the shorter throws. But he's got a really strong arm, one of the stronger arms probably in the conference. He's just not deadly accurate with it at all times.
Not getting to show it off then, because that's not been what my read would have been. But him better than I hadn't gotten to see that bit.
Neil said it's one of the strongest arm quarterbacks he's ever coached. Neil's been around, Neil's been at Kentucky, Texas Tech, Troy. He's been here for 5 years. So, he's been around a lot of quarterbacks, including both Seth and Jared, including Seth Dagey at Texas Tech back in the I guess it was around 2011, 2012 timeframe.
Yeah, that was post Leach, right? That was right after all that went down.
Yep. Last thing, is Dana on the hot seat in Houston, do you think?
Probably not as hot as other coaches who are sitting at 2-3 with a loss to Rice. But I will say that fans are not happy. At some point, that's to weigh over a lot. The real trick is that his contract you got to pay him out the rest of it anyway. And so there's some bit of it where I'm sure that the calculus is that, like, if we're going to pay him, are some of these just growing? How much of this is just growing pains and moving into the Big 12, and how much of this is him? And if you fix all the other things, because you got to pay him anyway, right? If you fix all the other things, we'll see. And this is, I think, an unpopular or maybe an unliked opinion amongst Houston fans. I don't think he's out before the end of the calendar year 2024. I bet that's the earliest. I think that the deal will be, and my show for Monday is talking about coordinators. At the end of the season, I bet that he has to cut ties with the defense coordinator because they've given up a lot of yards and a lot of points. And then last year they let go of the offensive coordinator. He went to Miami, and they never really replaced him. Dana's not officially calling the plays. They kind of are just going with like a committee of
Really?
offensive coaches.
I didn't know that. I thought Dana was calling them.
I guess he's having some influence. He's having the quarterback coach, Mike Burchett's having some influence. The running back coach, Emmanuel Gavi's having some influence. But really, the running back, offensive line, running game coordinator guy. But really, they don't have an official offensive play caller or offensive coordinator. And I would say that that's been to their detriment. And I imagine that's something that they've got to have fixed for next year, right? It feels unforgivable at this point that, you go through TCU without an offensive touchdown. If you don't have a coordinator, that's kind of a bad look. And so I would say it's not as hot as other people would think, but I don't think it's cool or cold. I think he is in some water right now.
Okay. Interesting. Thanks for that. I personally don't think he's on the hot seat either, like a lot of people say, because number one, he's best friends with the chairman of the board and biggest donor. Two, he's told everybody from the get-go that they're not there yet to compete for the Big 12 championship. It's going to take him a couple of years. I've heard him say that in multiple interviews.
Yeah.
He's been honest about that. And then he says I did hear him say he thinks they're more ready now than he was when West Virginia went into the Big 12. But because they had a couple years to start recruiting. But they're not. He said they're not where they need. If I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, he said they're not where they need to be from a depth perspective.
He continues to go back to a depth perspective. The interesting thing, and I don't. The interesting thing has been he's been consistent about the depth, as you say, but he also says stuff about how after all the transfer portal went so well and stuff, this feels like a Big 12 roster. I think that back and forth has, people question, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that?
I got you.
And I think truthfully, some of that's just coaches speak. I mean, you do this every day. Like coaches are not going to say anything too terribly inflammatory either.
Right.
But Dana lets you hear what he's thinking. But he, he's not going to go out there and bash his kids. But I do think depth is a coy way of saying, we don't have 350-pound defensive linemen like a bunch of these schools do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have 335-pound offensive linemen like a bunch of these schools do. We don't have 4-3 guys, just all over. Like it's not like every DB on Houston's roster runs a 4-3 like some of these schools do. I mean, there's gaps there. Right. I like our starters a lot, but the TCU game, the Tech game, we'll see how Thursday goes. When you look a lot worse in the second half, that depth does come into play, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Great point. But and another reason I don't think he'll get fired is because the president made a comment when they hired him that they fire coaches for going 8-4. He's only finished 8-4 or better twice, and he's still not fired.
Still not
so,
fired.
So that was an excuse, in my opinion, because they wanted to hire Dana Holgorsen.
Yeah. That was when they fired Major Applewhite. That was the comment. And because Major had a pretty good win-loss record. And they're like, yeah, but wait, that's not good enough for us. Well, it's how it goes.
Yep. And Dana's been better than him one season.
Just once. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's a sore spot for Houston fans.
Well, and Major wasn't particularly liked. But yeah.
Really?
No, I think everyone misses Herman, Tom Herman from before that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, guys, everybody don't forget to go check out Parker. He's over on Locked On Cougs on YouTube. Talks Houston Cougars. I know he does football. He also does basketball. So hopefully we'll have him over on our we opened a Big 12 slate with you guys this year. So hopefully we'll be able to get you over on our Hoops from the Hills channel or do some kind of collaboration there with you during basketball season as well.
For sure.
Where else can they find you?
Like I said, all social media handles are at Painsworth512, PAINSWRTH 512. And then the show is every weekday, Locked On Cougs. Cougs is COOGS. I think COUGS will take you to BYU. But so make sure you get those right. But other than that, it's Locked On Cougs every day, 20, 30 minutes Houston Cougar talk. Right now is in the heart of football season. But we do basketball and all kinds of off-season content as well. So come check us out.
Yeah, for those of you who are watching, it's up on the screen so you can see how it's spelled. Both his X handle and his YouTube channel are spelled out for you there. For those of you who might be listening, Locked On Cougs, COOGS, and at PAINSWORTH 512. Well, Parker, man, it's been fun. I've enjoyed this chat with you. I'm excited about Thursday night's game, and I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's always good to talk, Coos.
Absolutely. And everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you the next time in Q Country Roads.